So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our discussion on innovation. Is it worth the risk? Is it worth the investment? So my name's Julie Barry. I'm Head of Business Development for Rift R&D. Really pleased to be here today. I was lucky enough to be involved in the awards as well. We like to sponsor, we like to encourage innovation. So for a few years now, we've been involved in that. So I get to see some of the fantastic entries. And I'm really pleased today to be involved in the summit as well. I think it gives a really good platform for lots of important subjects to be discussed here. There are lots and lots of other sessions today, and I hope that some of you have enjoyed those as well. So next slide, please. So obviously, welcome to everybody. The session time should run for about 45 minutes. We are very strict on time, so we do have to stop shortly before that, otherwise we will be cut off because obviously there are others following us and we don't want to impinge on their time. Our aim today really is to share some thought leadership and hopefully inspire each other to change our perspective and maybe improve the way we do some of the things within the industry. We'll have some time for questions at the end. So if you do have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A session, in the Q&A chat box there. And we will hopefully be able to put them to our panelists as well. Just to let you know that a recording of the session will be available on the awards website next week, and a link will go into the chat box, so you'll be able to find that for yourselves. Okay, next slide, please. So, as you can see here on the slide, we have some fantastic participants in the discussion today. I was really fortunate during the judging process of the awards to meet all of the people present today and many more of their teams as well. It was a great time to hear all about their sort of trials and struggles and successes in innovation in some of their fantastic projects that will be as the finalists for the awards. I'm really pleased that we've managed to get a representative from everybody today. So just to introduce them, we have Andrew Cox, SHEQ Director from FM Conway, Stephen Prowse, Project Director, Artelia, UK, Stan Chapman, R&D Director, Advanté, Terry Steele, Project Manager, Highways from Morgan Sindall, Alex Wood, HS&W Manager from Overbury, and Ben Pang, who has been working on the project, or I think it's more Alex has been working on the project with Ben and fellow students at Queen Elizabeth School. So really pleased to have you all here today. So next slide, please, I think. Oh, sorry, I've jumped forward one. But before we go on to ask the audience, what I'd like to do today is just share some of my own thoughts about the industry and about innovation and from my perspective. And hopefully that will feed into some of the comments and questions from the rest of the panellists later on. So as I mentioned earlier, I work for Rift R&D. I'm very lucky to spend a good deal of my time speaking with lots and lots of innovative businesses, helping them to identify which activities and costs qualify for the R&D tax relief. As I'm sure you can imagine, it's really diverse because we talk to anybody really that is doing anything innovative, literally, as I say, across all sectors of business. Everybody has their own challenges. Every sector of industry has their own demands to stay ahead of the curve and remain relevant in what is a very competitive environment. I don't think anybody has it easy at the moment when it comes to innovation and staying ahead of the game. We specialise at Rift in R&D in the construction industry. And I think my view on it is that as an industry, construction seems to have more than its fair share of challenges. Now, I speak to a lot of people within the industry, and they're always focusing on, what can be done better, what's gone well, but maybe what hasn't gone so well as well. If we look at some of the targets that the industry has, we've got zero carbon, the targets to be cheaper, faster and greener, embracing modular and off-site work, well-being, health and safety challenges, digital construction. not to mention contractual issues, financial challenges, and the list goes on and on and on. It seems that to survive in such demanding industry, innovation is absolutely paramount. Yet, I find that construction isn't always seen by those from outside and inside the industry as being highly innovative. We hear a lot about how much the industry needs to change to meet the demands of the targets and challenges, but do we recognise how much change the industry endures on a day-to-day basis and how much innovation goes into that? I see a lot, but I would, because I deal with innovation and I'm not embedded in the day-to-day sort of doing the same thing over and over again. So what I see are the really good bits of it. So I would say it's a very innovative industry. But today we'll be able to hear from some of the industry's trailblazers, share their experience of innovation and what it means to them and to their respective businesses, as well as their views on the industry as a whole. So I think we should have a lively debate. I'm hoping that we're going to have lots of interesting points and also some interesting questions from you, the audience. So before we start on that debate, we'd like to get a feel for your organisation's attitude to innovation. So can we start the poll, please? So can I ask you all to vote? So what is your organisation, including, I was going to say, can the panellists vote as well, but I'm not sure that they can. So what is your organisation's attitude to innovation? Averse to risk and innovation, innovative only when it's imperative, let others innovate and then apply to your own business, or have strategy and resources to invest in innovation? Perhaps you could let us all, if you could vote, everybody vote there and click submit. That's really good news, isn't it? Because that sort of leads to what I was saying, that I see it to be a very innovative industry. So most of you, so 71%, have a strategy and resources to invest in innovation. We haven't got anybody has put down that they are averse to risk, which is great. Some only innovate when it's imperative, 29%, but the majority of people have a strategy and resources to invest in innovation. So, that is very promising for the industry, and it's great because it does actually reflect what we're seeing, sort of certainly from the R&D tax perspective. Okay, so I think what I'd like to do now is just to get our panellists involved and start asking some questions so that we can hear from them. They're the people with their sort of feet on the ground. So I think it'd be great to understand first of all from them. And I think we might go to Stephen first, if that's okay, Stephen.
Yeah,
so get yourself ready. So just wondering. There are barriers to innovation. There are always going to be barriers. But from your perspective, what would you say are the biggest barriers? I've got some suggestions that it might be. So potentially client-led barriers, procurement, people racing for the lowest cost, but also that attitude of the client towards risk and towards change. So in your experience, what would you say are the biggest barriers?
I would agree with the client, and actually I would add the funder to that as well. Within the heritage arts and culture sector, which is where I predominantly work, the attitude towards doing something new is very, very, very risk averse, and we have to work very hard to be able to encourage, demonstrate that the risk is well considered before a funder will actually go with us and those ideas that we put forward. I go right back to somewhere like Bletchley, where we had the World War II huts, in dire condition, about to collapse, and we brought in a procurement strategy, and that brings me on to the next one, which is set there as procurement strategies that they can be used to innovate, and we were able to bring in a a pain and gain process, basically, which the Heritage Fund had never really used, and the client had to be quite brave to go with us. But it worked very successfully, and we were able to conserve the World War II huts with a main contractor. And the innovation that we had there was that we got the contractor involved very early. We let them take the huts apart to see exactly what was going on before they put a price in. And then we had a pain and gain process which encouraged them to do that pre-work really well, because there was risk attached to it. So, and with our project for the landing craft tank, again, we were able to convince the funder to bring in the contractor at an early stage, and use his expertise to be able to develop the scheme, and it worked brilliantly. So yes. Client and funders are a big barrier to innovation, I would say, because they need confidence. At the end of the day, it is their money that they're putting in at risk to be able to move forward.
Lovely, thank you, Steve. Terry, can I ask you the same question as well? So, what would you say in your field are the barriers to risk? Because you're very much highways. So, barriers to innovation. So within the highways sector, do you see it as different?
No, I completely agree with Steve's points about the client. Ultimately, it's their money, so they can definitely have an aversion to risk in that space. They're typically public sector, so taxpayer. So they've got various procurement policy notes and government diktat that understandably has to be followed, but in following those processes, it sometimes can be quite rigid and narrow, and not allow deviation for that innovation and that R&D. So I do agree that the client can be ultimately a barrier in some spaces. I also feel that standards can be. I totally understand we all have to work within the various standards set by Network Rail, Highways England. There has to be standards as a baseline to work from, or else you'd have a completely different quality in every different road and structure. So I'm not saying they're a bad thing, but they definitely sometimes can be a barrier. So both Network Rail and Highways England have these standards for those reasons, and therefore sometimes going outside of them in terms of a material, an application, working outside of a certain temperature range, all these different things. If you're going outside the specification, you typically have to have a departure, which has to go through numerous individuals and bodies to get approved. And that can take time that you either don't have in your program, costs that you haven't accounted for, and simply say, well, it might not be worth this effort. So for me, I think the client, but also having a deviation from standard can be very difficult in highways. Working outside of effectively specification for highway works can be challenging.
Yeah, I think sometimes it does come down to the culture, and I think that's basically what you guys are saying there. That some people are going to be more receptive to it. Others, the risk is less, so they're prepared to take that chance, as it were. So I think that sort of brings me on to the next question, and maybe Stan, maybe you could jump in on this one. So how do you think you create a culture where failure is an option? So when you do try and innovate, if it's not an instant success, that it's not the end of the world? Oh, Stan, I think you're still muted. There we go. I think we should be able to hear you now.
Yeah, is that okay?
That's it. We can hear you, Stan.
Oh, marvellous. At times I do that. Sorry, yes, that's an interesting one. The culture change, really. I think what happened with us, talking from our experience, was we started to innovate. We started to see projects come through. Then a few projects had failed. Then we'd be chased by the board. And I think the biggest thing that changed people's minds was that we started in the process to develop a strategy of monitoring the changes in regulation, the changes in emphasis in the industry as a whole. And through that, we could see the need for a product. We're a plant hire company, so we could see the need to change our products and innovate our products. And we knew that that gap was going to be filled by somebody. So we had to do something. So there wasn't a question that we could do nothing because our products would become outdated. So we had to do something. So in that, we had to take a risk, and the board had to accept that risk was manageable. And how did we manage that risk? We managed it on the basis that we would develop products, and we always had what we called a fallback strategy. So if it didn't work in the new market, we could pull it back and put it in an old market. Not an ideal solution, but once we'd seen some successes, then the board were on board with that, and they could see that the logic and how it worked. And obviously, I think that's the biggest driver, is once people see the success of some of the innovations that you bring forward, they can see the market, they can see the company grow, and us become known for doing X or Y. Then that was the big change for us. And that's how we overcame the resistance.
Okay, thank you. Alex, perhaps I could just ask you a little add-on question to that one. So when you're choosing to do something with your culture that you're creating amongst your students here, do you find that they are less? Maybe I should have asked Ben. I'll ask you first, then we'll ask Ben what he thinks. But do you find that they are less cautious about failure?
I think they don't like to fail. They like to find something that works, like all of us. But they see that occasionally it's a failure, and let's move on from there and see what we can do to just make things better. It's the work, the drive that they put through it, really.
Okay, Ben, can I just ask you to add on to that? So obviously, you're, let's just say, younger than the rest of us here today, still being a student. Do you feel that when you are actually setting about these projects that you're working on, particularly the one at the moment, that there was a big risk in failure, or something different to that?
Well, unlike everyone else here on the panel, we were aware of risks that could happen, but then for us, the consequences of the risks are so minute and, well, not important that we wouldn't mind taking the risks.
Fantastic. Okay, so the next question then. So I think we'll come back to Steve on this one. That's okay with you, Steve. So innovation is expensive, we know. Innovation is risky, we know. So how do you choose where to invest innovation funds? Is it dictated to you, or is there something that you would really sort of put some effort into selecting the most likely success area?
Yeah, I think it's got to be the value that you're going to add. That's why you're going to take that risk is to actually provide new value for whatever you're doing. And and I wanted to say, Stan and Alex and Ben was saying there, about the appetite to take the risk. I find that providing you've got a plan B, you can help people take those risks and move forward to get that value. And if I go back to a landing craft tank, we had an option to take the landing craft tank to pieces, which would have been the lower risk. It would have been still risky, but it would have been a much lower risk, versus taking the landing craft tank in one piece over to South Sea and from the sea onto land. And there was huge amounts of cost in both options, but the value that we were adding, the conservation value that we were adding by taking that risk of taking her in one piece, outweighed the risk of going the safe option. but we always had that plan B. And that's where you have to bring the client and the funder along with you to know that there's that plan B to get out of jail.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder as well, perhaps Terry, we'll come back to you on this one. Do you think sometimes it's easier to quantify the risk than it is to quantify the success in innovation? And therefore it's perhaps viewed as more risky and costly than it is?
Yeah, 100%. On every highways project, we have what's called a risk and opportunities register. 2 different tabs. You find your risk register is about 200 lines long and your opportunities maybe 20. It seems to be a focus in the industry to quantify that risk, to make sure you can overcome it. So I think as an industry, we are engineering, we're a bunch of problem solvers. So we see a problem, we document it, we come up with a solution, we overcome it, we move forward. That's typically how, we operate across all our projects, certainly what I've seen in Morgan Sindall. But it's having, I think, also the time to assess, well, where's the opportunity? So our day-to-day is making sure that we build safely, quality, and overcome what we potentially see as a risk. So it's almost kind of like the risk is definitely concentrated on more to make sure it doesn't happen. So it's not like it's a negative thing, it's a problem-solving thing. Whereas having that time to sit and think about where's the next, unlocking of output going to come from? Because for me, that's what innovation really is. If you're unlocking output and you're increasing productivity in any way, be it little, small, taking something that already exists, trying it in a new application, coming up with a new material, anything like that, it's great. It's about unlocking output, but it's about having the time to assess where the next even small need is going to be, let alone a big one. And then being able to quantify that. It's very hard to quantify an opportunity because how do you know it's going to be successful? How do you know how much you're going to spend on developing it to get there? How do you quantify numbers of staff? How do you quantify how many times you're going to fail before you succeed? So it's very hard to put a program on and a cost to opportunity, whereas it's pretty easy to do that with a risk, because the risk is easily defined, whereas the opportunity is less so. So I definitely think that risks are easier to understand. But I think as an industry, I think we problem solve all the time and we innovate all the time. And it's I've just gone through the R&D process in Morgan Sindall, and some of the things we've done, I was like, oh, I didn't even realise that was innovation. And so I think it's maybe also explaining to our engineers what innovation is, and then they can really maybe get a bit more excited about it as well. So yeah, for me, it's definitely easier to quantify risk and opportunity, but the opportunity is actually where the exciting stuff is.
Yeah, I absolutely hear what you're saying there, because we obviously speak to a lot of construction companies, and they go, well, we're not really very innovative. And I'm like, really? Let's have a little chat about some of the problems there and challenges that you've overcome recently. And it is a fine line, I think, between engineering and problem solving and innovation. And, I had to smile because we hear that a lot, that, well, no, we're not innovative, we're engineers.
Yeah.
Okay, I think they may go hand in hand. Let's have a look a little closer.
Yeah, I agree.
I think also, Steve, maybe come back to you on this one. Following on from that question there, do you think that the fact that everything is project by project, that the question, just to remind you, was about is it easier to quantify risk and the cost than the success? But do you think that where it is project by project, that you may not have the same problem, the same challenge again, that it is harder in that way to actually be able to say, well, we did that before, we can do that again, and it's going to save us money, save us time, because each project is so individual?
Yeah, I think the learning is taken forward, and as Terry said, even in the smallest of things, there is new learning that keeps coming forward. So yes, you've quantified the risk. Yes, you've looked at the opportunities, and it may be a very bespoke project that you're doing, but those skills and the confidence that you've gained from taking those small steps or something new in that project definitely can be taken forward into other similar projects. I do work in a very, if you like, heritage conservation driven world, but nearly every scheming, whether it be Canterbury Cathedral, whether it be Norwich Castle, whatever, you're always uncovering new things, and there's a new way to deal with it. And some of those things that you've done before, where you innovated in the last project, you can bring forward into there. And I think being able to capture that learning is really important. And I'm lucky in a way that we have a project evaluation nearly on everything that we do, and it does give that opportunity to learn how within the industry that is disseminated. I think that is a challenge for the industry, to be honest with you. There is lots of learning, and some people, because it is a commercial advantage, are very, we'll cover that. We'll cover that's our innovation. That's our unique selling point. That's the difference with it. And that makes it a very closed, innovation. Whereas really, I've worked in the construction industry for a long, long time, and I keep saying there must be a better way of doing this. There must be a better way of doing it. And the government's new playbook starts to, I think, open up some of that, the construction playbook, where the involvement of contractors early in the process, the specialists, handrails and all those sort of things, bringing those people in early to really help you, make this bespoke project, a success. It's transferring that learning. That's the challenge, I believe.
Yeah, I can recognise that because I see a lot of activity in the industry where we're speaking to several businesses that are trying to solve the same problem. They may all have an R&D claim because at the end of the day, that information is not shared. It's not public knowledge. And so it's all about information that's readily available. And I think in the construction industry, that is one of the big issues, that there isn't somewhere that anything can be readily available. Everything seems very siloed to the individual companies. But I think that perhaps comes from how competitive the industry is. That everybody, if they've got something that they think is going to give them a slight edge, I love that everybody's nodding their heads on this one. If somebody's got Alex, I'm going to come to you in a minute on this because you looked very animated for a moment there. It's difficult, isn't it? So Alex, give me your views. What do you think? Oh, still muted. There we go.
Yeah, the industry's always been very secretive, and as we say, it's to gain the commercial advantage against the competitors. I think that the biggest issue I see is that there are so many things that we come across which could and should be improved. And, working with these young minds who aren't burdened with all the issues that you have throughout your career, I think it's great for them to think of new ways of doing things. And, we give them the simple projects, hopefully, or simple tasks, and they come out with some fantastic stuff over the years. Yeah. And we need that injection of youth in the industry, my view is.
I think that right there is a whole other discussion, Alex. We might have to have that one another day. But yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it, to break away from the doing what we've always done because that's the way we've done it, to let's look at this and say, if we knew nothing about it, if we'd never ever done it before, how would we do this? And how different is that to what we're actually doing? I have to say sometimes somebody I know says to me sometimes, if somebody said to you, there's a massive pile of bricks and there's a massive pile of cement, you go build a house. If you didn't always do it that way, you'd go, why? Why? Why are we starting with that? So yeah, I think it's a really good point that you make there. Okay, let's move on to another question here, because it has actually been touched on, I think, through several of the comments that we've had so far. So I think, Stan, can we come to you first with this one?
Yes.
So how important is collaboration when looking at solutions for industry problems?
Oh, it's vital. I think both internally with our own teams across our business, but more importantly with the client and with trade bodies. That's the key, I think, to understanding when you're bringing innovation forward. You need to have a clear goal and a clear objective. Now, that might start to move a little bit as you get a clearer picture of what you're actually doing, but without collaboration from the client, without some input from your own team about the practicalities of what you're suggesting, you end up with a solution that's not really workable long term. And for us, being hirers, obviously we're looking for solutions that have a reasonable product life in the industry, and so it's vital. So we're involved with all sorts of things: supply chain, school, considerate contractors, you name it. We look at all these aspects of it, and we try and get information from there. We look with our key clients, and a lot of the key clients have teams that are involved, as we can see, with innovation, etc. So they're pushing for changes in the industry, changes in the product, and we're trying to answer that, and we're trying to build a broad-based product that meets, as it were, the prime need. So, yeah, collaboration is absolutely vital to get the right result and a long-term successful result.
Mm-hmm. And also, Terry, if we pop back to you for this one, because there was obviously quite a bit of collaboration on your entry for the awards. Well, to be honest, as there was with everybody, I think. So what do you think is the answer in encouraging more collaboration? Because as far as I can see, it reduces the cost, it reduces the risk, it shares the knowledge, and it's that same old adage of two brains are better than one. So what are your views?
I think as an industry, we're far bigger than the sum of our parts. Every project has, it was in highways, a main contractor, and then a vast array of supply chain. We have supply chain family that feed into that project. We could not build without a supply chain. And then obviously key for us is our client. So typically a local council or Highways England, they need to be on board with us too. They're the ones funding the project. So I think collaboration is absolutely essential. I think it's the bedrock of the industry. Our submission couldn't have gone forwards without collaboration, both in terms of our supply chain partner with Rosehill and Highways England. Highways England have been on board with the approach of the strategy, with allowing us to have a non-operational trial, a couple of them. We couldn't have more, as Morgan Sindall have done what we've done. It was absolutely crucial that we had that engagement and support from Highways England and the supply chain. And then as part of the various trials and tests, we've incorporated and brought in even more. So everyone has their own specialism, their own understanding, their own knowledge, and it's bringing all that together in the right space to allow innovation to happen. I don't believe it can be done by a single business or a single entity. It's about encouraging everyone to share for the benefit of everybody.
Yeah. Steve, you're nodding away there. Did you want to add anything to that?
It was just, it's having that environment where no idea is a bad idea. Everybody can bring an idea to the table, and that for me is true collaboration, where, everybody feels comfortable. It may sound completely daft, but, work it through. Let's look at it and see what comes out at the end of it. As I say, no idea is a bad idea until you proved it a bad idea. But look at it.
Yeah. So, are there any actual barriers that you have to overcome in trying to collaborate more?
Commercial.
Yeah.
Commercial is the one that springs to mind. Ultimately, generally as an industry, we don't operate on massive margins. So that's why we have the everyone was nodding about it being a competitive industry. There's a few key clients with quite a big supply chain and generally quite small profit margins. So for me, it's about the barrier in terms of opening up and sharing your IP. It's commercial. For me, is a barrier.
Okay, I'm going to have a look just quickly at some of the questions. We've had a few in, so I'm going to run through those. So bear with me while I just have a quick read through. So we've got a question. Oh, this is a good one from Alistair Donaghy. How do the panelists reward innovation within their organisation? Who wants to take that one?
Well, we've got within our organisation. Sorry, Steve. Within our organisation, we've got little things like extraordinary effort awards and those sort of things where there's a small financial reward for somebody who's really shown some sort of innovation and really tried to change things. Because it can be within the company to change things as well. Those innovations come from, but there's a lot of sense of pride in what you're doing, and within the company, we are promoting that, and we're the little websites and bits and pieces like that. But it can be a little bit of financial, but really it is about sense of pride and achievement that you've gained and peer respect, I guess, really.
Stan, you're nodding there. Did you want to add something to that?
Well, yes, I agree with what Steve's saying. It is, people like to be involved and informed about what your company's doing, how it's progressing, and what it's developing. So that's important to keep that sort of pride in the company going. But we treat our employees, all of us, as a team. So everyone has a stake in the success of the company, and that's reflected in their annual bonus, effectively. So it's in everyone's interest to make sure that everything comes together, that they don't block each other, that they all work to resolve issues through the year to get that end result of a successful product or a successful trading year, whatever. So we try and bring everybody in that way, and we try and keep them informed with regular information about what we're doing and how we're doing, so that they can talk, informed conversations with clients about what we're doing, what we're developing, and just it's all about that feel-good factor, I think, and keeping that enthusiasm going. Once you've got the team up and with you, then the sum of the parts is greater than it's just really good when you get a good team working all towards one end, and that's how we try and keep our team motivated.
Yeah, similar in Morgan Sindall, we have the All-Star Awards, and some of those categories are based on kind of innovation, and then we have various kind of thank you cards and awards throughout the year. We have monthly cascade, which is like a monthly update of the business, and on there typically, if you've done something innovative or you've got some thoughts, there's a slide on that every month, and a little magazine called Think. And if you've got a good idea or you've done something great, you go in the little magazine. So it is about recognition and encouraging the staff to get involved and to think outside the box. And then anything can go in there, small through to large. So and sometimes we have a monthly spotlight as well. So you can just get picked randomly in the business and ask what your view is. So kind of got to have one and be engaged. So yeah, recognition, I would say. And then also similar to Stan, we got to pull together as a business to get your bonus. So there's a small financial incentive, but the main thing is really that recognition, that involvement across various awards and across various monthly engagements that we have.
Yeah, I think it comes back as well to culture and what we were saying about creating an environment where it's okay to not get it right first time round. Okay, I have a question here from Ian Bailey, and I think we might go to Alex on this one, and then anyone else that has something to add, please feel free. Just saying we've got 5 minutes left, so we'll do this question, and then we may have time for one more, and then we'll have to wrap up, otherwise we'll be kicked out. Very gracefully, of course, but kicked out nonetheless. So from Ian Bailey to you, Alex, let's start with you. How do we break through the procurement barriers with public sector clients so we can really innovate? And remember, I said we've only got a few minutes. Good luck.
We work with a government clients, and there is an appetite now more and more for a social conscience. And, we this year will be working for one particular client, and we'll have to raise our game with the students to provide some social conscience measures. It's important to people moving forward that we're not just an industry that builds stuff. We have to give back something to the country, really, in terms of helping people around where we work.
Anybody want to add anything onto that? Steve's unmuted.
So I think breaking through the procurement barriers for the public sector is a very difficult thing to do. We often work with the procurement police, and it's so rigid, so rigid to move through there. And I understand it's public money, but there must be ways where early engagement, and I keep saying that today. I do believe it is. Get the experts in the room, get them early, pay them a small amount, keep it competitive, but get them in early and work through the scheme that way. I'm conscious of time, so I'll finish there.
Thank you. Okay, one last very quick question, almost a one-word answer. Well, we'll give you more than one word. But if you could solve one industry problem, what would it be? We'll start with you, Terry.
Weather. Yes.
Brilliant.
It would be weather. The amount of program delay and cost associated with temperature and rain. So for me, I don't. Brilliant. There's various things I could say about how to do it, but if I could solve one problem, it would be the weather.
So off to Spain for you then, Terry.
Yeah.
Stan, anything from you on that? One industry problem that you could solve?
Information exchange. I think that's
fantastic.
We are all very close. Keep everything close to our chests, and we ought to exchange more.
Alex?
It's got to be dust. I think dust is such a vital issue. Occupational health is still not really recognised fully, and dust, we've got to stop it somehow.
Yeah, well, you and the team are working on it, as we know. Steve, anything for you to add?
I would say completeness of design.
Yeah.
To avoid change. And to improve certainty.
Okay. Ben, anything from you? We've literally got seconds.
So I would say dwindling natural resources. So like rare earth elements, without them, we can't continue innovation.
Fantastic. Great. So we're pretty much out of time. Thank you all very, very much for your contribution. I think we've had some brilliant points made today, all about sort of culture, sharing information, early engagement. So hopefully everybody's enjoyed the discussion. Thank you again for your time today, and good luck for this evening. And thank you everybody for joining the discussion today.